bookish people, welcome back to my channel. My name is Megan. In today's video I'm going to be doing my October wrap up. These are all the books I read in the month of October. I read 18 books this month and I loved most of the books. I think the lowest rated book on this, like my stack, is a 3-star read, and there's only one of them. So that means all the other 17 books were a 4 or 5-star read. And actually I have 2 more books in here, so I guess that brings it up to 20 books, but I'm not including those in the 18 number just because they're books I didn't complete. I will maybe complete them one day, but we shall see. It is November 1st, but it's my October wrap-up. I'm still in a Halloween mood. We got my Hufflepuff sweater on. We got these awesome scream nails. Like, we're still going with the Halloween theme. So I separated this pile into genres. So first we're going to be going over mystery thrillers, and I have like 2 like fantasy books, some romance, and then just like some general fiction, and then like the 2 like not DNFs, but like I don't know when I'll finish them. I will finish them eventually. First, we're going to start with the mystery thriller pile. That's what's on top because that's what's most on theme for October. Let's get into it. The first book I read, I feel like, was such a popular book, and this is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelis. I feel like this is one of those mystery thrillers that everybody has read. I finally just read it this month. This book was really good. This book I rated 4 stars. We're following Theo and Alicia. Theo is a psychotherapist and Alicia is a patient at this one psychiatric hospital, and she's there because she shot her husband point blank in the face 5 times. And Theo wants to get a job specifically at this one psychiatric hospital because he knows Alicia is a patient there and he's really fascinated by her story, and he just kind of wants to reach out and help her. And then when he gets there, he realizes that she's silent. She doesn't say one word, and so he is trying to break through her shell, get her to start talking, and figure out why she did what she did. And I love this book so much. I think it was really interesting. I will say there were some lulls and some like boring moments in the book, but overall I thought it was a really enjoyable time. I listened to the audiobook in one day, so obviously like those boring little lulls like were quickly over. Also though, the one thing I'll say is he's like a psychotherapist, but he honestly acts more like a detective in this book, which I didn't really like think was realistic, right? I mean, he goes to like all these people in her life like before the crime happened, and like kind of like wants to know about her life and asks about her, and I just like a real therapist I feel like would not do that, like, you know what I mean? It was way more like detective vibes than like, oh, I'm a psychologist type of vibes, but like it makes sense once you read the whole story. And also too, the ending was mind-blowing to me. Like the 2 storylines that are kind of in this book, I knew they were going to intertwine in some way towards the end because, like, you know, like why else would you have these 2 storylines? But the way that the author like blended those 2 storylines together at the end was honestly so shocking to me. It's honestly not what I was thinking was going to happen, because I'm definitely one of those people who tries to predict the ending to mystery thrillers. I did not predict that at all. I thought it was so clever. I absolutely loved it. If you read this, you're definitely going to be shocked at the ending. And yeah, I highly recommend 4 stars. Next book I read this month is Good Me, Bad Me by Allie Land. Am I holding? Yeah, here we go. I was like, why am I holding over the paper side? It's like a weird way to hold a book. Good Me, Bad Me by Allie Land. So in this book, you're following our main character. Oh, I see. The book is upside down. Okay, see, this is where it gets confusing because like, okay, there we go. Good Me, Bad Me by Allie Land. Because of the text, I was like, wait, why is the text this way? And this feels weird. That's not how you... Okay, makes sense now. And so this book, you're following our main character, Millie, and her mother is a serial killer. And Millie always knows that her mom's a serial killer. Like, she committed all her crimes in front of her daughter. And one day her daughter works up the courage to finally go to the police and tell them everything that her mother did. So then they remove her from the house, and she ends up living with her therapist and like just trying to get prepped for the trial. And she kind of creates a new identity because this is like a big national story, and she doesn't want anyone to know like who she is or who her mom is. So she kind of like keeps everything on the DL. She has like a new name, new life, new family, goes to a new school. And honestly, this book is probably one of the darkest books I've ever read in my entire life. I highly recommend, before you read this, go look at the trigger warnings, because if you're sensitive to any any sensitive topics, if you're sensitive to any, those types of topics, I would just look up the trigger warnings for this book. This book was crazy. I really enjoyed reading it. I gave it 4 stars, but again, it's very dark. But yeah, it was definitely a book I feel like I never see anyone talk about. I mean, I guess it came out in 2017, right? But I feel like I never see anyone talk about this, but I definitely think it's worth reading. So yeah. go look it up. See if your library has an audiobook version of it. Go listen to it. The next book I read this month is The Neighbor's Secret by L. Alston Heller. This one was a September 2021 pick, but I actually thrifted this book for a whopping $4. So in this book, you're following a neighborhood. So you're basically following this white picket fence type of neighborhood, right? And there is just kind of there is vandalization happening. What do you, am I saying these words correctly? There acts of vandalism. There you go. There's acts of vandalism happening in this neighborhood. And so you're basically just kind of following all the moms in the neighborhood and all their kids and just kind of learning about all their problems. Honestly, I feel like this didn't necessarily feel like a mystery thriller. It felt more of just like a general fiction book. And then the ending was kind of, I guess, mystery thriller-esque. Like, you know, it has that like mystery thriller ending, but like the whole book doesn't really feel like a mystery thriller. It felt like more like general fiction, which is fine with me because I like general fiction. I was still entertained by it, but I wouldn't go into this book really looking for like that thrilling aspect or that mystery aspect to it, because I just think you'll be disappointed. I know this book doesn't really have the best ratings on Goodreads. It has like 3 point something, but like on the lower end. And like, I get it because again, if you're going into this for a mystery thriller book, I don't think you'll be like happy with it. Overall, I liked it. I liked the characters. But I read this at the beginning of the month, and honestly, now looking back on it, I rated it 4 stars, but I think it was rounded up from a 3.5 stars, which I will stick with that. But honestly, I feel like this book is so forgettable. So like, I literally cannot tell you one character's name in this book. Like, I can tell you things that happen in this book, but I cannot tell you one character's name in this whole book. So I think this is one of those books where like, I'm happy I read it, but it's definitely forgettable and it's definitely passable. Like, if you don't read this, you're not missing out on anything. Next book I read this month is The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. This is the sequel to the Thursday Murder Club, and I honestly think I loved this more than the original book. I mean, both books are amazing. I think both, did I rate the first one 5 stars? No, I think I rated the first one 4 stars, but I think this one I rated 5 stars. I'm not sure, or they're both 5 stars. I don't know. All I know is this one's a 5-star, and I absolutely love this book. If you loved the book Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn, you'll definitely really love this sequel book. And yeah, so in this book you're well, I don't know, I don't really want to give away the plot because I feel like such a big part of the plot is finding out Elizabeth's like job, because in the first book, The Thursday Murder Club, Elizabeth is like doesn't reveal her job. She's like, I can't tell you what I did for a living. But in this book you find out, and that's like such a big plot point to it, so like I don't want to give into spoilers. But this I think was such an amazing time. It is so much fun. I honestly, like, for Christmas want to buy these 2 books to give to my parents because like they're just so funny, they're just hilarious, they're laugh out loud. It's just like, I don't know, and the characters are so likable. It's such a cozy feeling. This is just, again, so fun. I highly recommend this series if you haven't read it yet. The next book I read this month is Sadie by Courtney Summers. This book I thrifted. I got it at Goodwill this month, and I had to listen to it immediately because I feel it's like one of those like classic YA books. Like, I feel like this is like such a recognizable cover. Everybody knows this book. Everybody's read this book. It's super hyped up. It says winner of the Edgar Award, and with good reason. This book was amazing. I rated this book 5 stars. I had such a great time reading it, and honestly, the audiobook for this is absolutely amazing. It's like the work they did on the audiobook, again, it's awesome because it just feels like you're listening to a movie with like the sound effects and just like the way they did the audio is just really good. So recommend that. I also read the Goodreads reviews. A lot of people recommend the audio for this one. In this book, you're following our main character, Sadie, and her little sister was brutally murdered. So she goes on the hunt for the killer, and then you're also kind of alternating between that storyline and then the storyline of someone who does a podcast following like true crime, and he's trying to find Sadie because he's trying to find Sadie and Sadie's trying to find the killer. So yeah, so you have these 2 storylines going on, and honestly, it was amazing. Highly recommend. It was another more like really dark book. I would say it's like a YA version of this book in a way. Like, these books I feel like are equally dark. This one's just darker because it's adult, but like this is pretty dark for a YA book. But yeah, I recommend this. I rated it 5 stars. Next book I read this month, honestly, a new fucking favorite book of mine. That is A Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires by Grady Hendrix. I absolutely loved this book. I listened to this book on audio. The audiobook was absolutely amazing. And yeah, I rated this book 5 stars easily, just like without a doubt 5 stars. I loved this book so much. I can't even tell you. First of all, I love vampires, okay? Like, obviously, like, I love vampires. Like, but this isn't, like, your classic vampire story. Like, this isn't, like, your likable main character vampire. It's, like, some gross, horror, fucked up shit vampire. But I still loved it. I love the moms. I love all the characters in this book. I think they're all just so fascinating, and, like, a lot of them are likable characters, and except for the dads. The dads are all pieces of shit. All the women in this book, hell yeah, love you. All, like, the dads and husbands in this book, no, fuck off, I hate you. This book, oh my god, it's just such a good time. This is, like, my first Grady Hendrix book I ever, like, read, and I know he's really known for, like, dark comedic horror novels, and let me tell you, like, you will not be disappointed with this book. Now, after listening to this book, I'm like, okay, I need to listen to, like, every single book that he's ever written, because, like, I'm just obsessed with this now, and I definitely want to reread this. Like, this is definitely such a good book that is going on a reread list. So, yeah. I highly recommend this book. Basically, I didn't even tell you what it's about. So basically, you're following these group of Southern women in the 1980s, I think, right? Or is it the early 90s? So basically, you're following these women in either the 80s or the 90s. I don't remember. I think it's like the early 90s, late 80s. And they're all obviously Southern. And they have a book club. And they're just kind of tired of reading like the boring, proper books. So they turn to true crime books. And at the same time they're doing that, a new guy comes to town and kind of like inserts himself into everybody's life, and then the women start becoming very suspicious of him, and they think he's a drug dealer, but he's actually a vampire, and it is such a fun time and amazing. I just like cannot say enough good things about this book. Go read it. The next book I read was Horror Store, also by Grady Hendrix. This one was the last book I listened to of the month, and this book was also really amazing. I really enjoyed this as well. This one was a lot shorter than this book, and in this book you're following our main character Amy, and like also Basil, and then what was her name, something Anne. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I'm just so bad with names, okay? And you're following Trinity and Matt, and okay, so they're all basically employees of this store called Orsk, and Orsk is basically knockoff IKEA, like an American version of knockoff IKEA, okay? And they work at this big department store. Every time they go in the morning, like some sort of vandalism has happened, like things are broken, things are left open, just like weird things. So the manager of the store, Basil, recruits oh my god, the girl, what's her name? Beth Ann, Ran, something Ann, and Amy to stay in the store with him overnight. And they're gonna do rounds, and they're gonna like get to the bottom of what is going on in the store. And then while they're like roaming the store, they find their other coworkers there who are shooting a ghost like movie, because they're trying to get on Bravo. So they're trying to shoot this ghost reality show. So it's about them just being in this haunted store overnight. I think if you've worked retail, I worked at Target, it's like so funny because I feel like you can relate to this so hard, and also it's like has that, so it's like comedic, but it's also dark and horror, and honestly I just really love this book. I rated this book 4 stars. This is the second Grady Hendrix book I've read, and I really like his writing style. I really love his just like storylines, everything about it. So definitely November. I feel like none of his books are on my November TBR, but like because I don't own any of his other books, and I'm really trying to tackle my physical TBR, but I feel like I'm just gonna end up binging all his books on audio in November, because again, the first 2 books I read by him, absolutely amazing, and I recommend this book, especially if you've worked retail. Next book I read this month was The Chain by Adrienne McKinty. So in this book, you're following our main character, Rachel, and her daughter, Kylie, right? That was her name, Kylie? Just want to make sure that I'm right. Yes. Her daughter, Kylie, because like I remember their names, but I also like second guessed myself because I'm so bad at remembering character names. So I was just like, wait, but I was right. So in this book, you have Rachel and her daughter, Kylie, and Rachel gets a phone call saying your daughter's been kidnapped, wire this much money to here, and then you have to kidnap another kid, and then you'll get your kid back. So basically you have a chain, right? It's like a chain. You kidnap someone else's kid, you call them, and then they kidnap someone else's kid and they call them, you know, it's just a chain, a cycle. And honestly, this book was so amazing. I highly recommend it. I had such a fun time listening to this. I think the book is really split up into 2 different parts, right? So you have like the first half of the book that is like, if you don't want to know anything about this book, if you want to go in completely blind, like skip over to like the next review I do, which is going to be a different book, because I feel like this isn't spoilery at all, but some people just like to go in completely blind. So the first half of the book, you're basically following Rachel as she's going through the process of the chain, trying to get her daughter back, kidnapping another kid, that whole thing. And then the second half of the book is Rachel going after the chain because they are just like, you know, a crime organization. So she's trying to go after them and take them down, but they're kind of that like all-seeing crime organization where that anything they do, like they're like tracking these people, so you really like have to be careful. So that's kind of like the two parts of the book. I feel like it's just two separate parts. You have the first part where she's a part of it, and you have the part where she's trying to take down the organization. I would say the part of the book where she's a part of the chain, that part, amazing, 5 stars. The part where she's trying to take down the organization, I rated more of a 4 star. So I say overall, I think this book would be like a 4.5 stars. Because the last part of the book where she's going after them, like it's interesting, but it wasn't as gripping as the first half of the book. Also, too, I feel like there was a little bit of a lull, like the transition from her being a part of it to going after them, like that part, I felt like there was like kind of like a lull there, like I was a little bored in that aspect during the transition. So yeah, I don't think that part was done 100% amazingly, but again, it was a really great time. 4.5 stars. I am really enjoying Adrian McKinty's work, and I really cannot wait for his next book to come out whenever it comes out. I was looking at his Goodreads, like, you know, profile to see like all the books he has. He has a lot, but he only has like 2 in this kind of style. So like whenever he comes out with like another like similar standalone book, I will be very happy. Which kind of leads us into our next book that I read this month, and that is The Island, also by Adrian McKinty. In this book, you're following a family of 4. So you have the dad who is there on business. They go on a trip to Australia. And then you have his new wife and his 2 kids, and the kids are kind of bored and stuff, and they want to see like a koala or whatever. So they go find this island off the coast of Australia, and the person who tells them about it is like, hey, you're really not supposed to be here, but like, I'll take you anyway. So they go there, and then something bad happens, and then they start basically being kind of like hunted down by the locals of that island. And so it's about them trying to escape the island and get back to the main shore and just all that stuff. So it was a really fun time. I actually really liked this book, but again, I love mystery thrillers where people are kind of trapped, and I also kind of love the survival element and kind of like being on the run. Like, to me, all of the elements of this book worked really well together, and I rated it 5 stars. I listened to the audiobook for this, which I highly recommend the audio for. Again, it was really amazing, but honestly, all of these books I pretty much listened to the audio book for, except for one. You guys, I have 18 books on this like wrap up, and I've read one of them physically. I'm trying to change that in November. I'm really trying to read more physically and work it into my schedule, but haven't done it yet. So yeah, anyway, this book was a really amazing time. I really just enjoyed it. It says soon to be a Hulu original series. I cannot wait for that to happen. I will definitely be watching it. And yeah, if you haven't read it already, I recommend. The next 2 mystery thrillers I read, I don't have the physical editions up. I just read them through the library, through my library app. So the first one I read was Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. I think that's her name. Because again, I don't have the physical book in front of me, but I want to give the author all the credit because holy shit, this book was amazing. So in this book, this is honestly one of the most unique mystery thrillers I have ever read. Chapter 1 of this book kicks off. You're like immediately invested in the book. So our main character, she sees her son shoot some random guy on the street, and then she runs down there. She's like, what is happening? And then the cops come and they arrest her son, and she's freaking out. It's nighttime. She goes to bed, and then she wakes up. It's the previous day, the day before the murder. And she's like, am I crazy? What's happening? And then she wakes up again. And then it's 2 days before the murder. So it's such an interesting concept because it's not a time loop, right? Like, she's not reliving the day of the murder over and over again until she like stops it. No, she's literally going backwards in time. She's jumping backwards in time. And it's just so interesting. Like, I just loved that premise of it. And I loved kind of like learning things in backwards motion. Like, I don't know. I just really enjoyed the concept of the book, the setup of the book, the execution. All of it was amazing. Highly recommend. 5 stars. And then the other mystery thriller that I read this month, which is the last one, is The Family Game by Catherine Steadman, which was a book of the month pick for September, I believe. Or was it October? I don't remember if this was a September or October pick. It was one of them. I was not able to pick it because all of my 3 selections were up. Like, if Book of the Month could add like a 4th selection, well, 1, I'd be broke. but 2, I would be owning this book. So, you know, I could have ordered it actually this month, but then I didn't. Anyway, we have this one, the Family Game by Catherine Steadman. So this book I also really loved, and I rated this book 5 stars as well. I was so invested in the audiobook, I literally could not stop listening to it. And this is another one, like, finished in a day. This book, you're following our main character, and she's an author. But she's marrying this guy, so her fiance. He comes from this super rich, wealthy family, and he takes her home to, like, he has a strained relationship with his family, but him and his family start trying to reconcile, so he brings his fiance to meet his family, and then the dad pulls her into the study and basically gives her this tape recording. And this tape recording has his confession to a murder on it. And she's like, what the fuck is happening? Who is this family? What is going on? So it's about her just trying to investigate that tape recording. Is it real? Is this a joke? Because he gives it to her and he's like, here, I have an idea for a story. Will you listen to this? Because she's an author. And she writes mystery thriller books. So he's like, here's my story. But then she's like, wait, is this real? Or is this what? So she's trying to figure it out. And this is just such a great book, because especially me, like, I love like rich family drama mystery thrillers. I always find them to be so fascinating, and this book was just crazy. And I honestly think this a great time to listen to this book is in December, because they have this whole thing about Krampus and like some Christmas themed spookiness. So honestly, this would be a great book to read in November, December if you're looking for a good like winter themed mystery thriller. The next book I read this month is The Coldest Touch by Isabel Sterling. In this book, you're following our 2 main characters, Claire and Elise. So Claire is a vampire. She's been 17 for decades and decades. And then you have Elise, who is a death oracle. So in the beginning of the book, she knows of her powers, but she doesn't know that the term is death oracle until like, I don't know, like 10% into the book. So she is a death oracle. So every time she touches someone, she can not only like know how they're gonna die, but she kind of experiences it herself and she gets the feeling of it. So she just doesn't want to touch anybody. Obviously, she touches her best friend. She knows how her best friend's gonna die. She hugs her mom. She knows how her mom's gonna die. So this kind of like leads her to kind of just like be by herself, because she just doesn't want anything to do with anybody. Because imagine how terrible that is. Anybody you touch, you know how they die. So Claire is part of this paranormal organization called The Veil, and they hired her to be Elise's shepherd. So basically her job is to go get Elise and kind of bring her into this paranormal world, and they're going to train her to be this death oracle and train her how to control her powers. And that's just kind of the premise of the book. And there's also kind of a romance between Claire and Elise, but I wouldn't go into this book looking for vampire sapphic romance. No, like the romance in this book is just kind of like a subplot. It's not like the biggest part of the book, but it's just like a nice little sprinkles in addition, like, oh my god, like nice and fluffy happiness and mixed in with this like kind of more like paranormal fantasy, like murderous book. So I really enjoyed this. I rated it 4 stars, and yeah, if you guys ever listen to it, I think you'll enjoy it. Next book I read this month is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. So this book I was so hyped up about. I learned about this book in summertime. It was constantly on my TBR. I never ended up reading it. And then finally it became available through my Libby app as an audiobook. So I finally decided to listen to it. And everybody gives this book such high reviews and everybody loves it so much. And I love cozy. I love happy. I don't need a deep story, but I didn't like this book. I rated it 3 stars. I didn't hate it. Like, to say I didn't like it isn't true, because I did enjoy my time listening to it. And it was a really short audiobook. It was like a 3-hour long audiobook. But I didn't love it. You know what I mean? Like, I found it to be a little boring. I feel like nothing really happens. And the stuff that does happen, like, it wasn't my vibe. Like, I just didn't love it. But I know a lot of other people do, so like I wouldn't say like, oh, this book is not worth the hype, don't listen to it, because I understand why people love it, especially people who read like big fantasy books, high fantasy books. I feel like I really in the beginning I kind of liked fantasy. Now I'm more like mystery thriller romance, but like I do like to sprinkle some fantasy in, but I'm not a hardcore fantasy reader. And I feel like if you're a hardcore fantasy reader, I feel like you would like this a lot more, because again, the book, it literally says high fantasy, low stakes. I'm not someone who reads a ton of high fantasy, and I think that also contributed to me like not vibing with it as much. Like I wanted to like this book, but I just didn't connect. So yeah, there's this book. Wanted to, but just didn't. The next book I read this month, we're moving into romance. This is like the one book I actually physically read this month, and that is The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. This is the same author as the Ex-Hex, which I picked as my October book of the month last year. And I hated that book. I gave it 2 stars. I didn't hate it, but I gave it 2 stars because there was so much wrong with it. And I was skeptical about picking up this book, but Erin Sterling is a pen name. The real author is Rachel Hawkins, the author of The Wife Upstairs and Reckless Girls, both books which I absolutely love. So I was like, I have to give her another chance. So I picked up this book. I have to tell you, I loved this book so much. It was so fun. And I think because I read the Ex-Hex, I kind of adjusted my expectations for what I wanted out of this book. It's not a romance with a ton of depth. It's not like the best, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna come here and tell you this is objectively like an amazing, well-written, well-plotted book, but I will tell you it is cozy, it is fun, and it really got me into the fall Halloween mood because there's just like the small town vibes, and she runs like a witch shop, and then her love interest also runs like a magical shop, so you know what I mean? Like, there's so much fall vibes in it. Like, read it for the vibes, read it for the good time, read it for the coziness. Again, don't go in there for like objectively amazing book. I rated this 5 stars. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I highly recommend this book. Next book I read this month, I read my first Christmas book of the year, and like, I really didn't even plan on reading a Christmas book this early, but the Libby, I had this on hold on Libby. I honestly thought I was gonna listen to it in November, but the hold came in early. Love when that happens. So I listened to my first Christmas book in October, and that was A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. Holy shit, guys, this book was so amazing, so cute. I want to listen to this again before the holiday season is over. I need to listen to this audiobook again because it was so amazing. I had such a fun time reading this book. It was so fun. I just have to tell you the premise of the book. So in this book, you're following our main character, B, and she is a plus-size adult film star, and her producer, Teddy, who runs like all the, he produces like all the adult films that she stars in. He just kind of trying to get out of the business, and he wants to film a Christmas movie because he's like, Christmas for the Hope Channel, which is basically the Hallmark Channel. He's like, well, Christmas movies and adult movies are pretty much the same. We all both have low budgets and a quick turnaround time, and it's just, oh my god, so funny. So he gets hired by the Hope Channel to do a Christmas movie. Mind you, they don't know he's a porn producer, and they don't know she's a porn star. And he hires like a real actress, not a adult film star, to star in it. But that actress drops out, and he's like, oh shit, I need someone really quick. And then the Hope Channel executives see this girl, B's headshot, and they're like, ooh, we like her. She would fit our character perfectly. And Teddy's like, okay, let's go with it. But he's like, tells her, you cannot let anybody know that you're an adult film star because this is the Hope Channel, which is basically the Hallmark Channel. So she is trying to go there, film this Christmas movie, keep her adult film record on the DL, and then her co-star is the Nolan Shaw, like the Nolan Shaw. Nolan Shaw from Ink, the boy band that she was obsessed with. I was gonna say the 3-person boy band, the 3-person boy band that she was obsessed with in high school. And he had like a bad boy reputation, so now he's trying to do this Hallmark movie to get back in the public's good graces, and holy shit, you guys. And obviously they fall in love. This book is just, it's too cute. Like, I just don't know how else to say it. It is too cute. It puts you in the holiday mood. And I just loved the little details in this that, like, okay, at one point they go to a strip club and they get a lap dance from a stripper named Prancer. B has a closed doors account, which is like essentially like our version of OnlyFans, right? It's like a fictionalized version of OnlyFans. And Nolan's like, I've been like a top tier. He's like, I'm a honeypot subscriber for the past 3 years. So he's like, you know, like like the top tier subscriber for her closed doors account. And he's like, I always have to watch it with my gingerbread lotion. And I'm just like, oh my god, it's too much, but I fucking loved it. And it was so much fun. Like, what more could you want? A stripper named Prancer and gingerbread lotion. Like, what more could you really want from a holiday book? It was so, and the cover is adorable. I showed this cover to my mom, and she was like, that literally looks like a Hallmark movie. I didn't tell her what it's about. I was just like, oh, look at this new book I got. She's like, that's so cute. It looks like a Hallmark movie. I'm like, little do you know, it's about 2 main characters that are starring in a Hope Channel movie. Yeah, I cannot say enough great things about it. I absolutely loved it. I definitely need to reread it. This is probably going to be like a new favorite romance just because I'm fucking obsessed with it. So, yeah, highly recommend this book for the Christmas time of year, 5 stars. The next book I read, also a romance book, but this one is a YA romance, and that is Well, That Was Unexpected by Jessie Q. Sutanto. Jessie Q. Sutanto is the author of Dial A for Aunties and For Aunties in a Wedding, both books in which I absolutely love. And when I saw she was coming out with a YA romance, I was like, I have to read it. I have to fucking read it. So I picked this book up. I listened to it on my Libby app. It was such a fun time. It was amazing. You're following our main character, and she lives in LA with her mom, and they don't really have much to do with their family in Indonesia. And one day her mom catches her in a compromising position with her boyfriend in her bedroom. And so she was like, that's it, we're going to Indonesia. So she takes her, they go there, and she's kind of reconnecting with all her family. And then she meets this boy there who is actually comes from one of the wealthiest families in Indonesia. And something happens and they end up entering a fake dating relationship. And it was such a cute time. If you loved the family aspect of these books, like Medi's relationship with the aunties, you'll absolutely love these books as well. I love Jessie Q. Sutanto. How many books has she written? She's written Dial A for Aunties. She's written this one. She's written Well, That Was Unexpected. She has another one called a middle grade fantasy book, which the only reason I haven't read it is because my library doesn't have an ebook or an audiobook. Like, what are you doing? And then she's coming out with another one in 2023. My goal is to read all her books because they're just so good. They're so fun. They just make you smile. Like, they're books for bad days, right? Like, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling down, like, instantly brighten your mood. But even if you're in a happy mood or a content mood, it'll just make you even more happy. You know what I mean? Like, her books are magic. Like, they are magic. I'm obsessed with this book. The cover is adorable. I need to go buy the physical edition of it because, like, I need it for my shelves. But the thing is, my shelves are overflowing and, like, I don't have room for another bookshelf. So, like, I only have 2 to work with. You know, but like this one I think deserves a place on the shelf. The next book I read this month, I don't know if it's really considered romance. I'm considering this general fiction. And that is The Lost Ticket by Freya Sampson. I don't own the physical edition of this book, but I need it. Even though it's just a paperback, it's nothing fancy. I just need it for my shelves because this book is probably one of the most wholesome books I have ever read. It made me so happy. It just made me smile. I was so invested in the story, so invested into the characters. I just absolutely love them. So you're following our main character, and she goes on to a bus one day. And while she's on the bus, her name's Libby. Right? Yeah, because I remember I was like, oh, like the audiobook app. So she goes on this bus, and she meets this older man, Frank. I don't know. I don't have a physical edition. I don't have the back of the book to reference, be like, oh, these are the characters' names. Again, I am so bad at memorizing names. But anyway, so you have Libby and Frank. I'm gonna put an asterisk on those because that's just like a maybe. Like, I could be making that up. It could be accurate. And I'm like, I love this book. 5 stars. Best book I ever read all year. But I don't know their names. You have our main character, Libby, and she's going on the bus, to go somewhere. I don't know. And she meets Frank, and Frank tells her, he's like this old man, and he tells her about the story of decades earlier. He was on the bus and he met this woman and he was just in love with her, right? Like, love at first sight moment. She handed him her phone number on a piece of paper, and then he lost it. He lost the ticket, hence the lost ticket. He lost her phone number, and so he's been riding the bus for decades just trying to find this girl again and reconnect with her because he's like, that was the love of my life and I missed her. So Libby is going through a hard time in life. She just broke up with her boyfriend of 10 years. Well, her asshole boyfriend actually dumped her for like another girl. It's like a whole thing. And so she's like, Frank, I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna help you find this girl. So then there is Frank's caregiver, Dylan, and Libby and Dylan. I guess this is considered romance because they kind of have a romance together, but I feel like it's just more of like a found family general fiction book that has some romance in it. But yeah, so then you have Dylan, who is the caregiver to Frank. He takes care of him because Frank is struggling with, well, you know, he's older. He's struggling with like dementia or Alzheimer's, one of those. And it's just, oh my God, I can't even tell you guys. I just love this book so, so much. Like, just everything about this book, I just loved it. Like, I want to give all these characters a hug. I want to give this book a hug. This book just feels like a hug. It's just warm and it's cozy and it just makes you smile. I just personally loved found family books. Like, this book, Iona Iverson's Rules for Commuting. If you love this book, you'll love The Lost Ticket. And I did love this book. Just like the idea of just like strangers like coming together and like just becoming friends. Like, I don't know. And like that found family, like I just love it. Like, there's just nothing better than that trope. And this book just did a spectacular job. I wish it came out in hardcover because I need a beautiful hardcover edition. And again, I just like cannot tell you enough times to just go read this book. Just like go read it, go read it, go read it, go read it. It was so good. And I knocked over my stack. Next book I read this month, another book I absolutely loved, and that was Winter in Paradise by Elin Hilderbrand. So this is the second Elin Hilderbrand book I've ever read. The first book I read by her was Hotel Nantucket, which was her 2022 release. It was a book of the month add-on. Absolutely loved it. Stunning, 5 stars. This book, same thing. Stunning, 5 stars. This author has written so many books. Like, I can't even tell you. Like, look at this list of books that she's written. It is my goal to get through all of them. So in this book, you're following our main character, Irene, and during New Year's, she gets a phone call saying your husband is dead. He died in a plane crash on St. John's Island. And she's like, what was he doing there? What is going on? And it turns out he was on a plane with another woman and she also died. So she goes to this small island to kind of deal with her husband's death, you know, like put everything in order. Oh, also turns out her husband owned a huge mansion villa on this island as well that she had no idea about. Basically, he was leading a double life with another family on this island, and she goes there and she kind of learns about all this, and her sons come with her, Cash and Huck, who are also dealing with their own struggles. Cash was given stores by his father and he kind of runs them into the ground, and then you have Huck, who is dealing with a hard time with his wife. Him and his wife in the beginning of the book start the process of separating and getting a divorce because his wife is leaving him for another doctor at her hospital. And oh my god, like, just I loved this book so much. Like, I love Elin Hilderbrand's writing. I just love the way she structures her books, like the multi POV like structure of her books. It's just, everything about these books are just so good. Like, I just can't even tell you. They're just so good. Because it's like the characters are going through obviously like depressing things. One's wife is leaving him. One just went bankrupt. Her husband died and he has a whole secret family. But it's not sad when you read it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a sad book. It's like happy and it's fun and it's a good time. And you do get that found family element in here as well, because these 3 strangers are coming onto the island and they're starting to connect with all the islanders who really know her husband's mistress really well, you know? So they're trying to kind of get to know the island. So there's that found family aspect in that way, where there's kind of their 2 worlds colliding, coming together. And again, it's just such a wholesome book. Not wholesome, but it's such a good book. When I say wholesome, I was thinking The Lost Ticket. It's not like that type of wholesome, but it's just such a nice book. I really highly recommend it. I'm obsessed with Elin Hilderbrand's writing. I read 2 books by her. Dare I say she's might be a favorite author. I feel like we're getting in that direction. Now, we're going to go over the last 2 books, which are they're not DNFs, they're just, I didn't finish them, and like maybe I'll finish them in November, maybe not, maybe December, maybe not, who knows. First one, Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I was so excited for this book to buy it because I've been dying to read this book. There's so many times I try to read this book and I just never did, and I finally did, right? I got it at the Barnes & Noble. I did not love it. I read the first 2 stories. So you have 2 stories in here, 4 short stories in here. I read the first 2. I read The Lovers, The Husband and Wife. I started The Sisters. And then there's The Mother and Child. I only have 2 hours left of the audiobook, but like, it is such a struggle for me to actually do it, to actually finish those 2 hours. I just don't care. I don't know why, because this is supposed to be like one of those wholesome feel-good books too. You know, it seems right up my alley, but I'm just not connecting. I know so many people love this book, but I just don't care. I just don't care, and I'm just not connecting to it. So yeah, there's this book. I might finish it, but I read half of it in October. Based on the half I read, 3 stars, but who knows when I'll finish it. Next is Other Birds by Sarah Addison Allen. I have less than 100 pages left. It's a very short book anyways. It's right at the 300-page mark. I can't seem to finish it. When I first started this book in September, I really enjoyed it. When I was 30-40% into it, was really enjoying it. The last half of the book, though, I'm just so bored. It's literally like watching paint dry to get me through this book. I'm so bored. I just don't care. And also, I feel like the experience for this book could be different if I listen to it on audio. My library doesn't have the audiobook, so I have to physically read it. But I feel like this is the type of story where I would enjoy the audio version of it. Maybe it wouldn't be a 5 stars, but I don't think I would be struggling as much to get through it if I could just listen to it. But yeah, this book, I'm not vibing with, which is really surprising because I think in my October TBR, I was like, oh, I'm 40% into it, I'm 30% into it, and I love it so, so much. It's going to be a 4 or 5 stars. And now I'm like really struggling to finish it. It's because in the beginning it was interesting, but as you go on, it's just like boring. Like nothing's happening. I'm just kind of bored. And yeah, so there's this book, and that is the conclusion to this video. These are all the books that I read in the month of October. I hope you guys enjoy this book. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to subscribe down below for my November TBR. Well, actually, my November TBR, which one's coming out first? I don't even know. But enjoy. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.